all you care about is protecting your seat, not justice.
I don't defend a seat, I defend the law. Justice isn't about pride or position, it's about fairness for everyone here.
I know my rights. The words cut through the courtroom like a thrown object. Sharp and sudden, bouncing off the wood-paneled walls before anyone had time to breathe. Heads turned. A few people in the gallery straightened in their seats. Someone in the back lifted a phone a little higher. This was the moment everyone secretly waited for. The spark that usually ignited chaos. The young defendant stood rigid. Chin lifted, confidence rehearsed and loud enough to sound unbreakable. He wasn't whispering to his lawyer. He wasn't asking a question. He was declaring a challenge. In his mind, those 4 words were armor, polished by clips he'd seen online. Proof that power belonged to whoever spoke first and spoke hardest at the bench. Judge Frank Caprio didn't react the way people expected. No gavel strike. No warning. No irritation flashing across his face. He simply stopped. The room followed his lead. Silence spread, heavy and uncomfortable, stretching long enough for certainty to start cracking. Cameras kept rolling. Spectators leaned forward, sensing they were witnessing the birth of something viral, something explosive. Everyone assumed a clash was coming, that authority would snap back, that pride would meet pride. But Judge Caprio remained still, eyes steady, letting the silence do the work. And in that pause, before a single word was spoken, the balance of the room quietly began to shift toward something no one saw coming. The tension promised a reckoning that would redefine power, dignity, and justice forever for everyone. This wasn't just another traffic citation or minor courtroom exchange. Moments like this now travel faster than truth itself, clipped into 15-second videos, stripped of context. Fed into an online culture that rewards volume over understanding. I know my rights has become a slogan, a shield, a performance. Say it loudly enough, confidently enough, and the internet promises you power. Across the country, courtrooms have become stages in people's minds. Social media has taught a generation that authority can be embarrassed, that rules bend when challenged hard enough, that dignity is optional if outrage gets applause. Confidence, even when hollow, is mistaken for courage. Noise is confused for strength. That is why this moment mattered. Because this wasn't just a young defendant pushing back. It was a collision between 2 belief systems. On one side, the idea that rights are weapons, tools to dominate a room. On the other, the quieter truth that rights only function when paired with responsibility, respect, and restraint. Judge Caprio's courtroom is famous for compassion, but it is not careless. People walk in hoping for mercy, yet knowing nothing is guaranteed. Every case is a test, not just of the law, but of character. Who you are when challenged matters. How you speak matters. Whether you listen matters. This tension reflected a deeper struggle playing out far beyond those walls. Immigrant families, working people, and young voices searching for identity watch moments like this closely, hoping authority will listen instead of crush. They want proof that respect still has a place, that learning matters more than winning. In that courtroom, generations collided, one shaped by viral shortcuts, the other by lived experience. The outcome would either reinforce cynicism or restore faith that justice can educate without humiliating, correct without destroying, and remind everyone watching that true power rarely announces itself, especially when tested under relentless public pressure and expectation today and everywhere else. And as the silence stretched on, one truth became impossible to ignore. This pause was not accidental. It was intentional. And to understand why it carried such weight, you first had to understand who was standing behind that bench. He didn't walk into that courtroom intending to become a villain. In his own mind, he was prepared. He had studied the lines, memorized the phrases, absorbed them from clips that promised empowerment in under a minute. I know my rights wasn't defiance to him. It was protection. A verbal seatbelt, he believed, would keep him safe from consequences he didn't fully understand. His confidence looked solid, but it was assembled, not earned. Built from sound bites, comment sections, in viral moments where authority figures were made to look foolish. Those videos never showed what came before or after. They taught a simple lesson: speak up, speak fast, and never back down. Nuance didn't trend. Listening didn't go viral. So, he learned to perform certainty. Even when certainty was fragile, beneath the lifted chin and steady tone was something more complicated. A young person navigating a world that constantly tells him he must fight to be seen. That respect isn't given, it's taken. That silence is weakness. He believed asserting rights meant rejecting responsibility, as if the two could not coexist. It wasn't malice. It was confusion dressed up as confidence. His words carried the rhythm of rehearsal. Legal language without legal understanding. A script learned secondhand, repeated without reflection. He wasn't challenging the law as much as he was testing whether it would bend for him. Whether volume could substitute for wisdom? Whether authority would retreat if confronted boldly enough? This mindset is the real antagonist in the room. Not the boy himself, but the culture that taught him performance over patience. That taught him that dignity comes from dominance, not accountability. That rights are shields, not responsibilities. His defiance was less about disrespect and more about fear of being powerless in a system he didn't trust. And yet, even in his bravado, cracks appeared. His eyes searched the room for affirmation. His pauses lingered just long enough to reveal uncertainty. The louder he sounded, the more it became clear he was trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. This was a young man standing at the intersection of pride and insecurity, hoping confidence alone would carry him through. He believed strength meant never yielding, never asking, never admitting uncertainty. That belief had shaped his posture, his tone, even his breathing. It was armor he wore tightly, afraid that removing it would expose vulnerability he didn't know how to manage yet. In another courtroom, with another judge, this posture might have been met with immediate resistance or humiliation. It could have ended in raised voices, sharp warnings, and a lesson delivered through punishment alone. That expectation hung in the air, shaping his stance and hardening his tone. What he didn't realize was that the man he was addressing had seen this posture countless times before. Not as a threat, but as a teachable moment, waiting patiently to unfold right here today. Because the person he was challenging wasn't just any judge, that made all the difference in life. He did not arrive at that bench by accident. Judge Frank Caprio carried the weight of a long journey every time he sat in that chair. A journey shaped by immigrant struggle, working-class sacrifice, and a belief that justice must never forget the human being standing before it. His parents came to this country with little more than hope, teaching him early that dignity is not inherited. It is practiced daily through humility and effort. Growing up, Caprio learned the value of restraint long before he learned the law. He watched his family work relentlessly, not to complain, not to demand shortcuts, but to earn respect quietly. That upbringing taught him something power never could. Authority without empathy is fragile. True strength is measured by patience, not volume. Decades on the bench refined that lesson. Judge Caprio has seen anger masquerading as confidence thousands of times. He has watched young people mistake defiance for self-respect and adults confuse punishment with justice. Over the years, he learned that shouting never creates understanding. It only creates resistance. But calm, when paired with clarity, can open doors even the law cannot force open. His courtroom became known not because he was soft, but because he was deliberate. Mercy in his hands was never random. It was earned through accountability. He believed every case was an opportunity to teach, not to dominate. The law to him was a framework for growth, not a weapon for humiliation. People left his courtroom remembering the lesson long after they forgot the fine. Caprio understood something many never learn. Most people standing before a judge are already afraid, even when they sound bold. Fear wears many disguises. Sometimes it raises its voice. Sometimes it interrupts. Sometimes it hides behind phrases like, "I know my rights." He learned to listen past the noise, to hear what was actually being said beneath the posture. That ability did not come from textbooks. It came from lived experience. From moments when patience changed trajectories, when a calm explanation prevented a life from hardening into resentment. He had seen lives shift direction because someone in authority chose to explain instead of explode. Those moments stayed with him, shaping how he measured success not by control, but by impact on the human soul. Years of these encounters sharpened his instinct. He could sense when pride was brittle and when defiance was a plea in disguise. He knew when a warning would harden resistance and when a pause could invite reflection. This awareness separated him from judges who ruled only from procedure and routine, or personal ego alone. Experience taught him that timing, tone, and silence often speak louder than punishment ever could inside any courtroom. This philosophy earned him respect far beyond his courtroom. Immigrant families saw themselves in him. Working people trusted him. Young viewers, scrolling through clips online, felt something rare. An authority figure who did not speak down but spoke through understanding. His presence reminded people that justice could still feel human. So when silence fell after the boy's declaration, Caprio was not calculating punishment. He was recognizing a familiar crossroads. He knew exactly what that posture meant. He had seen it before, and he knew where it could lead if handled carelessly. This was not about winning an exchange. It was about shaping a moment. He waited because waiting matters, because the pause itself was part of the lesson. And when the boy finally doubled down, expecting dominance to carry him forward, Judge Caprio leaned in, ready to speak not with authority alone, but with wisdom earned over a lifetime. Back in the courtroom, the boy didn't retreat. If anything, his voice grew firmer, sharper, as if volume itself could tip the scales. He repeated himself, leaning into the confidence he had rehearsed, asserting rights as though they were a final verdict already written. Each word was meant to reclaim control, to show he would not be intimidated, not here, not now. The room tightened around him. You could feel it in the way people stopped shifting in their seats, in the way breaths were held a little longer. This was the moment everyone recognized. The moment authority usually snaps back. Viewers at home would expect a warning, a rebuke, maybe even a gavel strike to reassert dominance. But it didn't come. Judge Caprio listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't lean back or signal impatience. He allowed the boy to finish, then allowed the silence to stretch again. It was a silence that pressed down harder than shouting ever could. Each passing second forced the boy to sit with his own words. Without applause, without reinforcement, the imbalance slowly revealed itself. One side was performing, trying to win an argument, trying to prove strength through resistance. The other side wasn't competing at all. Caprio's stillness reframed the exchange. This was not a battle to be conquered, but a lesson waiting to be delivered at the right moment. The boy's confidence began to wobble just slightly. His posture stiffened. His certainty searched the room and found no reaction. Without interruption to push against, his defiance had nowhere to land. The power he expected to seize remained untouched, unmoved. That tension was intentional. Caprio understood that escalation often collapses under its own weight when met with calm. By refusing to react, he shifted the burden. Now the boy had to confront the space between what he said and what it meant. He knew the room was ready. That attention was locked, that the lesson would land because everyone was listening. Not resisting, not reacting, just waiting for meaning to emerge from restraint. Patience and authority earned through experience. Humility and time itself. The courtroom felt suspended, balanced on a knife's edge. Everyone sensed that the next words spoken would define the moment, not as punishment, not as victory, but as revelation. And then, without raising his voice, without striking the gavel, Judge Caprio finally spoke, delivering a sentence that would change everything. Judge Caprio finally broke the silence, not with force, but with clarity. He leaned forward slightly and spoke as if addressing a classroom rather than a courtroom. He did not challenge the boy's confidence. He acknowledged it. He explained that knowing your rights is important, but understanding them is what gives them meaning in real life and in moments that test character. He reminded the room that rights were never designed to cancel responsibility. They exist to protect dignity, not to excuse behavior. His voice was steady, deliberate, unhurried. Each sentence carried weight because it was not rushed or sharpened for effect. He spoke of rights as doors, not weapons doors, that open when approached with respect and close when used carelessly or misused. The courtroom shifted almost immediately. People who expected confrontation found themselves leaning in. Caprio spoke about how the law does not reward volume or defiance. It rewards understanding, accountability, and restraint. He explained that asserting rights without responsibility weakens them for everyone, especially for those who depend on them most to survive and be treated fairly. He explained that many people misunderstand power. They think it comes from pushing back, from refusing to bend, from proving they cannot be corrected. Caprio calmly dismantled that idea. He said real power shows up when someone can accept correction without losing dignity, when someone can listen without feeling erased, and grow without feeling defeated. He reminded the boy in the room that laws exist because people once demanded fairness, not dominance. Rights were born from struggle, sacrifice, and collective responsibility. Every generation inherits those protections, Caprio said, but also inherits the duty to use them wisely. Misusing rights for personal defiance weakens them for the next person who truly needs protection. He added that progress is never sustained by shouting alone. It is sustained by understanding systems deeply enough to change them responsibly. True reform begins with education, patience, and discipline, not confrontation for attention. His tone never accused. It invited reflection. The boy stood frozen, absorbing something he had never been taught this way before. This was not a shutdown. It was an invitation to rethink. Caprio explained that confidence rooted in knowledge is powerful, but confidence without humility becomes noise. Strength, he said, is the ability to listen, to learn, and to adjust when confronted with truth. Murmurs moved through the gallery. Heads nodded quietly. The atmosphere changed from tension to focus. Caprio continued, explaining that the courtroom was not a battlefield where egos clash, but a place where choices meet consequences. Respect is not submission, he said, and accountability is not weakness. He reminded the room that every person before him has rights, regardless of background or status. Those rights do not disappear when someone makes a mistake, but they are also not a free pass to ignore responsibility. Rights and responsibility, he explained, grow stronger together or weaker apart. Caprio spoke directly to the boy, not harshly, but honestly. Knowing your rights means knowing when to speak and when to listen. It means understanding that the law is not your enemy, but a structure designed to keep order so fairness has room to exist. Decisions made here, he said, ripple outward into real lives. He paused, letting the words settle. That pause did more than any warning could have done. It forced reflection. It created space for understanding. Caprio explained that many people enter court believing they must defend themselves from authority. Authority, when practiced correctly, is not something to fear. It is meant to guide, protect, and correct. The boy's posture softened. His shoulders dropped slightly. His eyes lowered, not in shame, but in thought. The armor he arrived wearing no longer fit the moment unfolding. Caprio noticed the shift and adjusted his tone, not pressing, not humiliating. Growth, he reminded him, often begins the moment certainty cracks. He shared that over the years. He had seen countless young people arrive, convinced they had to fight to be heard. Many believed respect could only be taken, never earned. Those beliefs were understandable, Caprio said, but dangerous, if left unexamined. True respect lasts longer when it is built through accountability. He spoke of lessons learned over decades, of moments when patience changed lives more effectively than punishment ever could. The law can punish behavior, he said, but understanding can transform character. His authority came from experience, not ego. This was not about winning. It was about shaping a future. Silence returned, but this time it felt different. It was not heavy or threatening. It was thoughtful, alive. The boy nodded slightly, acknowledging something internal shifting. The room recognized it too. This was not defeat. It was awakening. Caprio concluded by reminding everyone that rights are not shields against growth, they are frameworks for it. Dignity is preserved through respect, not resistance. And as those words spread beyond that courtroom, their impact was only just beginning. The moment didn't stay in that courtroom. It escaped almost instantly, carried by clips, captions, and quiet astonishment. Within hours, the exchange appeared across timelines, framed by headlines that promised conflict, but delivered something deeper. View counts climbed. Comments multiplied. People didn't just watch it, they replayed it, slowed it down, listened again. Social media lit up, not with outrage, but with recognition. Viewers called it a masterclass in justice, not because anyone was silenced, but because someone was finally heard without being humiliated. Hashtags trended celebrating calm authority, dignity, and teaching instead of punishment. In a digital space addicted to shouting, restraint felt revolutionary. Comment sections became forums for reflection. Some admitted they had once believed loud confidence was power. Others shared stories of moments when patience changed their lives. Immigrant parents tagged their children, urging them to watch carefully. Teachers shared the clip in classrooms, pausing it to ask students what real strength looks like. Conversations spread beyond politics into homes, schools, and workplaces. People saw themselves in the boy, in the fear beneath the bravado, in the instinct to defend before understanding. They also saw something they rarely witnessed from authority figures: respect that didn't require surrender. Viewers across backgrounds recognized the lesson. Rights mattered, but so did how they were used. Accountability didn't erase dignity, it protected it. Commentators weighed in, calling it a reminder of what justice can look like when ego steps aside. Legal experts praised the clarity. Community leaders highlighted the educational value. Even critics admitted something unusual had happened. This wasn't viral because it was explosive. It was viral because it felt human. Parents discussed it at dinner tables. Young people debated it with friends. Some rewatched it privately, reconsidering how they approached authority, conflict, and self-expression. The clip didn't divide. It invited thought. It asked viewers to examine the difference between asserting power and earning respect. For many immigrants and working families, the moment resonated deeply. It felt like proof that systems could still listen, that dignity didn't have to be sacrificed to be corrected. It reminded them that justice, when practiced with intention, can educate rather than alienate. That lesson traveled farther than any verdict ever could. The boy's face, once tense, became a symbol of something larger, the instant when certainty gives way to understanding. Viewers noticed that shift. They talked about it. They shared it. Not to mock, but to reflect. The internet for once paused its appetite for humiliation. As the clip continued to circulate, its meaning expanded. It became less about a single exchange and more about a cultural hunger for leadership that teaches instead of dominates. People weren't just reacting. They were learning together, collectively recalibrating what authority, rights, and responsibility could look like in practice. And while the world debated, shared, and reflected, one truth remained quietly present. The lesson delivered in that courtroom was not finished. Because Judge Caprio wasn't done teaching, not even after the camera stopped. Judge Caprio's words left more than a courtroom echo. They left a universal lesson. Rights are not trophies to wave, nor shields to deflect consequence. They are instruments meant to protect and guide, but their strength depends on the wisdom and responsibility of those who wield them. To claim a right without understanding its purpose is to hollow it out, stripping it of meaning for oneself and for everyone else who relies on it, he reminded the boy. And everyone watching, that respect is never demanded by volume. True respect is cultivated through humility, through the willingness to listen, to learn, and to act with conscience. Authority does not need to shout because it is grounded in principle, not in intimidation. When dignity and patience lead, the impact lasts far longer than any momentary victory gained through force or fear. Caprio framed the courtroom exchange not as a contest of ego, but as a character-building lesson. He showed that courage is measured not by how loudly one asserts power, but by the ability to confront oneself honestly. The young defendant's bravado faded not because he was defeated, but because he began to recognize the weight of responsibility paired with rights, the value of listening, overreacting, and the quiet power of composure. For viewers, the lesson extended beyond the courtroom. It reminded families, students, and young professionals that every choice has ripple effects. That moral clarity often begins with patience, and that teaching can transform more lives than punishment ever will. Confidence without empathy is empty. Knowledge without understanding is fragile. Growth comes from the intersection of authority and guidance, courage and reflection. Rights and responsibility, the moment became a mirror for anyone. Struggling to navigate the tension between entitlement and accountability, pride and humility, it revealed that leadership does not shout that dignity cannot be bought, and that the truest lessons often arrive in the quietest, most unassuming moments. Caprio's calm mastery made visible what society often overlooks: the transformative power of measured words and deliberate example, and in that revelation, the courtroom, the boy, and everyone witnessing the exchange discovered a truth that endures far beyond any viral clip. That shaping character matters more than winning arguments, and that the lessons learned in moments like these carry the potential to guide generations. And that's the lesson every viewer is left with. It all began with 4 simple words: I know my rights. Words that sounded bold, defiant, even confrontational. Yet what unfolded in that courtroom proved that a statement, no matter how confident, can become a doorway to understanding when met with wisdom, patience, and dignity. What seemed like a challenge transformed into a lesson far greater than anyone expected, a reminder that authority tempered with compassion can teach more than anger ever could. Judge Caprio showed that rights are not just words to recite, they are responsibilities to carry. He demonstrated that respect is earned through humility, not volume. That the power of quiet integrity far surpasses the fleeting impact of bravado. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about shaping character, fostering reflection, and reminding everyone watching that dignity matters more than dominance now. That lesson doesn't have to end in the courtroom. Take it with you into your own life. Consider how you assert yourself. Reflect on how you respond to authority. Ask yourself whether confidence is accompanied by understanding, whether words are paired with responsibility. Share this story with others' parents, friends, classmates, colleagues, so they too can witness the power of calm, principled guidance over empty showmanship. This video isn't just content to watch and forget. It's a reminder that every interaction holds a lesson, that every moment of restraint can teach, and that every choice to act with integrity shapes the world around us. By sharing, reflecting, and carrying these lessons forward, you become part of a community that values courage, humility, and dignity over ego and performance. So watch, share, discuss, and let this moment inspire your own approach to power, respect, and responsibility. The impact of one calm voice, one patient lesson, one act of thoughtful authority can ripple far beyond what we imagine, and it all begins with understanding, listening, and carrying truth forward.